So I'd like to welcome everyone present and the viewing and listening public to this, the 23rd meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure. This meeting is being broadcast live on Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Deruk Timal. I'm the chairman of this committee. And I would like to invite our committee members to please introduce yourselves. We can go with those who are physically present, and then we go to those who are joining us virtually.
Good afternoon, Dr. Ibrahim, member.
Good afternoon, Lisa Morris-Julian, Vice Chair, member.
Good afternoon, everyone. Renuka Sagaram Singh Suklal, member.
Members Roberts and Padarat.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members. MP Barry Padarat, member.
I believe that also member Anil Roberts is with us online. And okay, thank you, members. So we'll proceed. First of all, the purpose of this meeting is to commence this committee's first public inquiry into the efficiency of road repairs, land slippages, and landslides in Trinidad and Tobago. Today we have with us officials from the Ministry of Works and Transport, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, the Tobago House of Assembly. They're here with us, Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, and the University of the West Indies. I'd just like to remind everyone that the inquiries, the objectives for this particular inquiry are threefold. One, to examine the current arrangements in place for the repair of roads, land slippages, and landslides. Two, to examine the challenges faced in relation to the repair of roads, land slippages, and landslides. And three, to determine the recommendations for improvement in the repair of roads, land slippages, and landslides. So at this point, I would like to ask for introduction by the entities that I called out at the beginning. And with the introductions, if at the same time, we can get brief opening remarks from the chief officer present for that respective entity. So we start with the Ministry of Works and Transport.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Sonia Francis Yearwood, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Works and Transport. I will give introductory remarks once everyone around the table has introduced themselves.
Good afternoon, Hayden Phillip, Program Director, Ministry of Works and Transport.
Good afternoon, Herbert George, Chairman of the Secondary Road Rehabilitation and Improvement Company Limited.
Good afternoon, Mahadev Jagdev, Program Director, Ministry of Works.
Good afternoon, Sridhar Matthews, CEO Acting of Lake Asphalt.
Good afternoon, Neil Mohammed, Chairman, Lake Asphalt.
Good afternoon, Tris Capriasa, Acting Director of Heights.
Yes, Chairman. So good afternoon once again to yourself and the members of the Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure, as well as the other entities gathered. Thank you for the invitation for the Ministry of Works and Transport to partake in today's meeting. The Ministry, through a multi-pronged approach by its various implementing arms, continues to deploy a range of interventions to address road repairs, land slippages, and landslides. We work with other state entities, inclusive of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, and the THA to assist with projects when necessary. So this afternoon, the team gathered here. We stand ready to answer any questions to the best of our knowledge and expertise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Frances Yearwood. We go now to the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
Good afternoon, Chair. Peter Mitchell, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. I'll ask my colleague to introduce himself.
Hi, good afternoon. Madhu Barup, Acting Technical Officer at the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
Okay, all right. My opening remarks briefly. It's a pleasure for the ministry to appear along with our colleagues from the Ministry of Works and Transport and the Tobago House of Assembly. The Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government functions as the coordinating agency which guides the municipal corporation and the special purpose enterprise, the Rural Development Company, in assisting communities by pooling resources in targeted areas, which include, among others, infrastructure development. Generally, repair of road, land slippage, and landslides are either undertaken by the ministry through its engineering unit, the municipal corporations, or the Rural Development Company of Trinidad and Tobago, depending on its size. The main role of the municipal corporation in this regard is to maintain, implement, and monitor road rehabilitation, land slippage projects along secondary roads that fall under their jurisdiction. Therefore, besides referral from the ministry, the municipal corporation will develop their own program of works based on the allocation under the development program and recurrent expenditure. The program of works at the Rural Development Company are mainly based on projects that are referred from the ministry for scoping and costing. The costing is submitted to the engineering and project planning units of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government for review and approval. Once the required approval is granted to the RDC, the procurement process for the approved projects is initiated and executed. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell. We go to the THA, Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development.
Yes. Good afternoon here. Good afternoon to the members. Good afternoon to the entities gathered here here today. It's a pleasure being here to share the views of the Tobago House of Assembly Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, known by the acronym DIQU, on this inquiry into the efficiency of road repairs, land slippage, and landslides. I am Armand Jackson. I'm the administrator here. I will go through, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves, and I'll do the brief opening remarks.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mr. Kevin Trestrill, Specialist Civil Engineer.
I am Ellis Boris, Dr. Ellis Boris, Technical and Engineering Advisor to the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to the chairman and the other members of the committee. My name is Atiba Martin, and I am the Manager, Engineering Design at the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development.
All right. Thank you all. Now, the division manages the policy and planning for the sustainable development of Tobago's infrastructure network. Its focus is on ensuring that infrastructure and systems are safe, robust, intelligently designed, and environmentally sensitive. It also responds to the local needs of the society in Tobago. Our core responsibilities include construction, development, maintenance of road networks, and drainage. And in doing so, we seek to anticipate and mitigate landslip and road repairs, and to ensure that we do the road repairs in a very efficient manner. Our role is integral to the protection of the physical environment, but we also realize that the infrastructural needs are being affected dramatically by climate change, and the protection of our environment is a pressing priority. So we look forward to the discussions today and the recommendations, and I thank you, Chair, for having us.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. So we go now to the Senior Lecturer, Transportation Engineering, Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at the University of the West Indies.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Leon. I am the lecturer and a researcher in pavement and materials engineering at University of the West Indies. And I have with me my colleague, Aaron Chidi, who will introduce himself as well as give the brief opening remarks. The other two members of the team are not available today due to circumstances beyond their control.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Is it De Leon or Lee Leon?
Lee Leon.
Lee Leon, okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Lee Leon. Okay, so now that the introductions have been done, we know a bit more about each other from the various entities and also the committee. We would begin our engagement through questioning and discussion. So just a couple of basic housekeeping guidelines is I'd just like to remind everyone that if you can direct your question through the chair, to remind members and officials that if you can please mute your microphones until recognized by the chair, and if everyone can please use the raise hand feature accordingly, and you would be recognized by the chair. The viewing and the listening public, you are invited to submit questions via the Parliament's YouTube channel and social media platforms. And we would try our very best to accommodate those questions in the proceedings today. So I'd like to open the floor to members for questioning and engagement. And we start with member Sagram Singh Suklal.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, again, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to have everyone here. This is certainly an inquiry that, I'm sure most members of the public would be very much interested in listening on, of course, because, it's no secret in the public domain, our citizens, from throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad are often complaining, of course, sometimes of road repairs, land slippages, landslides. They are real life issues that affect our citizens. I just want to start off, of course, through you, just to remind the entities who are here. Of course, this is not just an interrogation. It's really an opportunity for advocacy, for you to be able to explain to the members of the listening and viewing public what has been happening in your various entities. Because oftentimes ignorance is what may sometimes be, or the lack of information. I don't even want to use ignorance, but sometimes the lack of information amongst our citizenry may really be the root cause of persons casting blame on certain entities when we don't deliver with respect to certain goods and services. So this is also an inquiry for each and every one of you, the entities present here, to also be able to just advocate and speak to the public about your challenges, your circumstances, so that at least we can have a well-informed citizenry. To that extent, or against that backdrop, Chair, through you, I have some questions to the Ministry of Works and Transport. And of course, bearing in mind what our distinguished chair would have identified, the purpose and the objective really is to examine the current arrangements in place for the repair of roads, land slippages, and landslides. Now, immediately, I want to jump into a statement that was actually taken out of the submissions given or submitted by the Ministry of Works and Transport. And it, of course, was your response to question 1, which is actually on page 1 of your submissions. And I'm identifying where the question is going to come from, so it can assist the entity to go to that relevant page in their submission and then be able to assist the committee based on the questions that I have for you all. Now, in your submissions, you indicated that the Ministry of Works and Transport also collaborates with other state entities entities. You identified the Ministry of Rural Development, and local government, the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, and of course the Tobago House of Assembly, where necessary to assist with maintenance projects on the networks under the purview of those agencies. And that was an actual excerpt taken, as I said before, from your submissions. Now, based on that particular submission, my first question is, can you provide details of the maintenance projects under the purview of the entities identified that the Ministry of Works and Transport assisted with in the past 5 years?
Thank you, member, for the question. Now, the statement was born out of the fact that there are times when there would be an issue along a roadway that would be brought to the ministry's attention, but the roadway would be under the remit of another agency. In those instances, we would, as long as we are able to provide any technical assistance that we can. There are times when we may be asked for the types of assistance, and we will try to provide that assistance as well. So in those instances, we may not have to move. This is a technical matter here. We may not have detailed information on every project or event that may have occurred on, but definitely we would search our documents, and the specific ones that we have recorded, we would seek to put together and submit to the committee.
Okay. Now, coming from that question, now the committee noted, based on your submissions, that the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Governments submissions that the Secondary Road Rehabilitation and Improvement Company Limited, Cyric, was transferred from under its purview, which is the Ministry of Rural Development, to now Works and Transport. And this was effective from March 13, 2023. Now, I think the citizenry of this country, myself included, when this particular company was created, we looked at it as that company that is now going to be charged with the responsibility of dealing with the day-to-day woes of our citizens who commute and use our roadways. I've heard people refer to Cyric as the pothole company, but of course, this is no way to, to undermine the importance of this particular road company and what I envision the purpose of the company will be, right? At least as it relates to the improvement of road conditions for citizens. However, I believe there's still a lot of information that is not in the public domain relative to the purpose of this particular company, its mandate. So against that backdrop, can you provide the status of Cyric, including the details on its mandate and the function of the company? We'll start with that first, simply because I understand, at least based on what I have read in the public domain, I want to believe that a lot of members of the public still have not quite grasp what is the purpose and the mandate of your company. And of course, we recognize that the public is listening on to this session. So for the benefit of our population, again, can you just identify briefly the mandate and the function of the Secondary Road Rehabilitation and Improvement Company Limited? Mandate and function.
Thank you for your question, Chair. We at Cyric, we understand our mandate to be to assist with the maintenance of the road network throughout Trinidad and Tobago, throughout Trinidad, with particular reference to the secondary roads. And the focus is on the infrastructure of those secondary roads, and it will include road repairs, rehabilitation, upgrade of roads, and the associated drainage that goes along with those roads. This as far as the mandate is concerned. What was the other?
the functions of the company. So your mandates and your functions, which is interchange, which of course is
yes.
connected.
So what we will do, as I said, the focus is on road repairs, and not so much potholes. I mean, potholes has been singled out, but yes, there are potholes that we will repair as well. But there are other distress signs presented throughout our road network, and we'll be addressing those in a very forthright way. Because in some cases, potholes have grown so large, the whole wearing surface, has been distressed. So in some cases, the repairing of a pothole will involve quite significant, roadworks. We have to remove the top surface, reconstruct the base course, do the drainage works, and all of that will go into repairing an area that will present with just some large potholes. So it's a little bit more than just repairing the potholes.
So the company, as we appreciate, is it's a baby company, right? March 13, 2023. And of course, again, we are hoping that this is the company that is, especially with the monies that is being invested in the company, that of course, this will ultimately redound to the benefit of our citizens. Tell me then, you haven't placed onto the public record, what is your mandate? What is your purpose? Have you all commenced works through the company? And if at all possible, you can provide to the members of the listening public a general overview on the status of projects that you have already embarked upon and works that this company has already embarked upon.
Chair, so far, we have been engaged in building out the company with the various officers required for its effective operation. But even while we were doing that, earlier this year, we got a request to look at a road, I think it's Bradshaw-Niles, I think it's called. It is where the road that led to a primary school that was shut down. Students were unable to get, and teachers were unable to get to the school because of the condition of the road. We immediately put a team together, went out there, and did phase one of the repairs. We have not done the wearing surface yet, but we have restored the road in terms of its profile. So instead of this folded, depressed kind of a track, we have attended to those defects, and that road has become passable. The school was able to be opened. So we have also looked at, well, there's some other jobs that we have done, but essentially, as I said, the focus has been on building out the company.
Okay, and again, I want to recognize, yes, it's by March 13, 2023. You had the movement of the company from rural development into the Ministry of Works and Transport. So I would imagine that would have also accounted, that movement too would have accounted for the additional time required to build out the scope of your company, right? But give us an update on that then, because ultimately, I applaud you that while in the process of building out the company, you have still embarked upon work projects, right? But for the benefit of the public, can you then say to us, what stage are you all at in the establishment of your org structure, your staff complement, your board? Because ultimately that is going to impact the longer you take to put that house in order, is the longer you're going to take in order to be able to deliver to the citizens and deliver on your mandate. So can you provide to us then a status on those structures?
All right, our assignment to the works, Chair, our assignment to the Ministry of Works as our line ministry has enabled us to better collaborate with Pure, one of their units. Pure, who has been engaged in similar type of works over the years, and they have done so successfully. In fact, that written document that the Ministry of Works submitted, you will see there for the last 5 years, under the heading Road Rehabilitation, Pure had done successfully 549 projects, if you were to just count it. So we have been able to collaborate with them, and we intend to continue the collaboration. And by collaboration, I mean use expertise as available from them so that we can get better value for money rather than having to recreate those positions ourselves. So we are in that phase now, and we are nearing the point where we'll be able to engage projects in a more workmanlike manner, having done with the outfitting.
But Chair, again, through you, I have with respect to data capture, right? Given your mandate and of course what you're required to deliver on, what is the process in place in order for you to capture your data so that you understand what is going to be your top priority roads? And is it through the collaborative effort that you have created between Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Rural Development? I'm asking this because I'm thinking while you are building a company, if you simultaneously embark upon capturing the data, when the company is now fully in place, at least you already have the data, so you can just boots on the ground, hit the ground running, and deliver on your mandate, right? I mean, that's just my thought process. Is there a system in place, notwithstanding you're waiting for the company structure to be properly built out, apart from just people making complaints or people engaging you all, is there a system in place in the interim or simultaneously where you're capturing this data so you understand from the time things are in place what is going to be your first priority roads and so on? Is there a system such as that in place?
Okay, Chair, the plan is for the Ministry of Works to work with the Ministry of Local Government and generate the work program for Cyric. What do I mean by that? The complaints will be submitted to the Ministry of Local Government. They will then send it or meet with the Ministry of Works and develop a work program which they will send to us for executed. And I happen to know the time we were at the Ministry of Local Government, Rural Development and so they were in the process of developing an open source computer program to allow members of the public and whoever else to submit complaints of defected roads or whatever the issues are to submit those to the Ministry of Rural Development. So they will receive that. I think the app the app that they were talking about was one that would have been available to, pardon me?
They were geotagging. I recall that.
Yes, all of that, yes. In fact, the information that they will be requesting from the people who are making the complaints will be, the type of issue, the municipal corporation involved, the geolocation, photos of or to add further context, and the text description of the issue. So anyone who has who recognizes a problem on any section of the road, wherever, they can access that app, make that complaint to the Ministry of Rural Development, and they will then receive those complaints and, well, triage it, determine, well, who has to deal with them, and then submit it to the various bodies responsible for the repairs. So where roadworks are concerned, they will send that to the Ministry of Works, and the Ministry of Works now will go through the list and generate a work program for us, so that we would not be directly engaged in determining what gets done when.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you for that submission. Chair, through you, if I could now turn back to the Ministry of Works and Transport directly. Now, to the Ministry of Works and Transport, in response to question two, can I continue, Chair?
Yeah, please.
In response to question 2 on page 1, the ministry submitted that on 15th of May 2023, that it conducts routine conditional assessments on its infrastructure, inclusive of the pavement structure, existing and emerging landslips and bridges, in order to determine their condition and impact on accessibility. So that was actually stated in your submissions dated the 15th of May 2023, right? For the benefit of the viewing and listening public, and certainly for this committee, can you identify how often are these routine conditional assessments conducted? If there's a schedule in place, so you know exactly when and where you're going to conduct these routine conditional assessments, and more so, when last was such an assessment done? Because the reason why I'm raising this is because I want to believe if there's a system of continuous assessment that is done by the ministry, then you need not wait for things to be totally dilapidated before an intervention takes place. So I was pleased on one hand by your submissions to know that you all do these routine conditional assessments. But of course, the submission was very general. And I just want some information, at least again for our benefit and for the benefit of the public, relative to these routine conditional assessments that are conducted. If you could give us a little more details on how were they conducted, and more so when last, and how often are these assessments conducted, recognizing if you're continuously assessing, then we need not wait for roads to fall into total disrepair before there's an intervention. So the Ministry of Works, through you, Chair, if you could give us some information on that.
Yes, member. Through you, Chair, the ministry does conduct routine conditional assessments on the areas under its purview. That is done on a 2-year cycle. The last assessment would have been done in 2021. So we are due to conduct another assessment this year. In agreement with your statement, the assessment does allow us to identify certain areas to be addressed on a continuous basis and not necessarily wait until there is a complete breakdown, as you said. So that of course is done. So last assessment, 2021.
So once the assessment is completed, is there like an internal timeline in which then you just allocate necessary resources and get those, address those issues? Is there like a time frame in which the works, you have an internal system in place for that?
Yes, member, from the assessment, the outcome of the assessment would then feed in to our routine program of works that is undertaken by our district engineers, as well as the projects identified for construction over the period. And this is done.
And based on the assessment, I would imagine then you have a list of priority projects that you would know probably what requires immediate attention and so on.
Yes, member, that list would be generated. Of course, during the year, we would also have projects that would occur based on different weather pattern conditions, based on there are a number of various actions that can happen during the period that would take precedence sometimes from the program we would have developed, but a program of works would emanate from the assessment.
Okay, well, I am particularly pleased to know that just as a citizen of this country, to know that, okay, at least there's a continuous assessment and we're just not waiting until it's water, mud, and flour for an intervention. Chair, through you, if I may continue, I have a few more questions to the Ministry of Works and Transport. Now, based on your general submissions that you would have put before this committee, the committee understands that there was a shortage of bitumen that of course would have limited to some extent or impacted on road and landslip works coming out of the ministry. In response to question 9 on page 4 of your submissions, the ministry submitted that the shortage of bitumen delayed road and landslip repairs, since bitumen, of course, is an integral part in the mix in road paving and patching. My question is, okay, so out of that, I take there is a shortage issue, or there was a shortage issue. What systems have since been put in place in order to remedy this challenge? And perhaps if you can give us a status on that issue.
Through you, Chair, member, at question 11, we would have also identified that Lake Asphalt of Trinidad and Tobago has put the necessary supply contracts in place to allow for an adequate supply of bitumen at this point in time.
Correct. And to be very honest, I just wanted it to be placed on the public record because, of course, the members of the public who are listening on, they would not have the benefit of reading the submissions. But it is noted. Thank you very much. So is it fair to say that that bitumen issue that was perhaps one of the critical issues delaying projects and so on, systems have since been put in place? And, you would be able to say from the ministry's perspective that you have the necessary, you have the raw material now where you could continue on your roadworks and so on with those contractual issues and the supply and demand issues being rectified. Is it fair to say that you all could now, move forward with your projects and so on? Or are there still other challenges impeding your ability to move at a faster pace with respect to your roadworks and so on, and your general mandate?
Through you, Chair, member, bitumen is one aspect or one component required for the taking of roadworks. As far as that is concerned, we have been assured by Lake Asphalt that all necessary supply contracts are in place and we do have an adequate supply.
Yes. Member, you have other questions for the Ministry of Roads and Transport?
Yeah, I do, but I can give way and I can come back in at another point in time. That's no problem. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, member. Thank you very much. Member Padarat has had his hand up for a while, so we'll go to him first and then we'll come to Member Ibrahim.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, there are two specific areas that I would like to address based on the submissions that have been made by the entities that are currently before us. Some are broad view in terms of responses coming from the Ministry of Works and Transport, as well as its secondary roads company. The specific questions for the secondary roads company I would like to go through first, through you, if you would permit. To the chairman of the secondary roads company, we are very familiar with the information in the public domain that when this company was first announced, we were told that it was going to be under the Ministry of Rural Development and Rural Development and Local Government. We were further told through the budget estimates that a total of 200 million was going to be placed in this company. Since March of 2023, the company has now been placed under the purview of the Ministry of Works and Transport. And it seems to me that there has been a lapse of more than 6 to 7 months of absolutely nothing happening while this transfer was being done. Can you indicate, because I just wanted to be very specific, that since the announcement of this company almost 7 to 8 months ago to where we are today in June of 2023, can you confirm that this company has undertaken no projects at all under its responsibility and purview? That's the first question. The second question has to do with the allocation. In light of the allocation of $200 million, can the chairman of the secondary roads company indicate whether any money was utilized from that vote, even for the establishment and the structure of the company itself? those are the two questions that I have specifically for the chairman of the roads company, because I also heard the chairman indicate that the projects will be determined by the Ministry of Works and Transport in collaboration with other entities, and that information will also come to the ministry from other sources. I want to say that as a elected, I know Senator Sagram Singh Sukla spoke voluminously before, but with all due respect, I am an elected member of the House of Representatives representing people who voted for me. And as an elected member of Parliament, in my constituency, I remember in 2016 when Minister Fitzgerald Hines was appointed as Minister of Works and Transport, the Honourable Minister wrote all 41 members of Parliament asking us to send to him a list of the top 10 most deplorable roads in our constituency that needed urgent addressing. He was subsequently removed from the ministry, and then we got Minister Rohan Sinanan, who also wrote a very similar letter to us in 2016. This is almost 8 years later since those two ministers wrote us, and since I'm almost certain that all 41 members of Parliament would have replied indicating the priority areas in terms of the worst roads throughout their constituencies. So I find it very peculiar and very disheartening, very disappointing that we are now going through another cycle of being told that the Ministry of Works and Transport will then determine from other entities and sources which roads are priorities, which ones needs to be addressed, when the ministry already has that data and information. And therefore, it leads me back to the two questions I'm asking. In light of that information residing in the Ministry of Works and Transport, having been written to by one previous Minister of Works and Transport of this current administration, as well as the sitting Minister of Works and Transport, where has that data gone? Because as far as I know, as a sitting member of Parliament, we have not been contacted. My own constituency, I have not only the issue of road rehabilitation, but also the issue of landslips. I have communities in my constituency of Princestown that have been cut off from one area to the other because of these landslips. I have had at least 12 homes, massive concrete structures that have been totally demolished because of these landslips. And every time we ask a question in the Parliament, the minister then says, well, it's being looked at, but the final determination will be based on whether or not funding is available. To the chairman of their secondary roads company, you have $200 million. You have a mandate. You have the data. While the company is being transferred from one ministry to the other, whether it's due to internal politics or whatever the reason is, how many projects have you completed? It's almost a year since this company would have been up and running. And how much money have you expended, whether it's for the operations of setting up the company or whether it's contributing to any of the projects? That's the first line of questioning I would like to go to, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, okay. Ms. Yewood, or Mr. George?
So, through you, Chairman, the data that the member spoke about that was sent to the ministers earlier, that I cannot speak to. But what I know is that that is not lost, because there are so many projects, so many instances where repairs and so are required. That what I spoke about, that when I spoke about the computer open source program, that was sort of a going forward. But it does not mean that all the information that was submitted before by the various parties will be just thrown out or not acted upon. So all of those now will be looked at in those ministries trying to generate that work program for Cyric. What I can say is that Cyric is creating, or the fact that we have Cyric, it creates additional bandwidth for us to be able to attend to those many projects that have been reported on and have been have not been attended to over the years. So I am hoping that we'll be successful and we'll be able to make a dent in those many projects that are there to be worked upon. With regards to the funding, a sum of $100 million was made available first, and the plan was we will spend that to do two things: repairs and the building out of the company. And as that is depleted, the additional sum of $100 million will become available to be used. But well, by that time, it will not be for building out company anymore, but totally for the repairs and rehabilitation of roads. So that is happening. To date, we have done about, I would say, about 7 or 8 projects, have been done. And that was as the building out was taking place. As to the quantum, the value of those projects, I can, have that submitted afterwards. I do not have those figures at the top of my head, but about 7 or 8 projects have been done to date. And well, we are nearing the completion of that building out, and we'll be able to address more projects now as we move forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. George. Member Padara. You are muted, Member Padara.
Chair, as I said, I have additional questions, but I would allow members to go along, especially MPs who want to raise questions as well. So I will add further into the sitting.
Okay, thank you very much, Member Padara. We go to Member Ibrahim.
Good afternoon, all. I'm particularly interested in clarifying some things. What I just heard from the questioning of Senator Sagram Singh Supal and concerning the chairman of the Secondary Road Rehabilitation and Improvement Company, Mr. George, specifically. I think your mandate is very clear and your responsibility is very clear, and your purview is very clear. I just have a couple questions to ask. Member Padara spoke about the shift of your company from one ministry to the next. That has probably caused a certain level of delay for execution, for want of a better term. I'm also hearing that with respect to the allocation of the first half of the money going towards the build out, and I'm also hearing that it is going to be dependent upon the Ministry of Works to put out a work plan. Where you have come from and what you're intended to do, I am seeing a little bit of a hiccup becoming before we even start. And I'm asking if it is that I have a couple of questions based upon this point. First and foremost, with respect to the build out, are you creating an independent capacity within the Ministry of Works so that you can have access to plant, equipment, and machinery to respond? Would you be utilizing that of the Ministry of Works or the same contractors? That's number one. Number two, if it is that you're speaking of the app that was created and is still under construction within the last ministry you were attached to, how does that help the process when the Ministry of Works is coordinating your work? And just as your title states, you are the Secondary Road Rehabilitation Improvement Company Limited. How do you see these points that I've raised to probably cause a lack of efficiency? Because I'm seeing, without looking too hard, that there is going to be a coordination issue. And as it is, that money was allocated for a roll-out program, and the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago is definitely looking forward to many of its ills on the roads that you can handle under your purview being approached in a very comprehensive and efficient and speedy manner. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Francis Yearwood, Mr. George. It seems as though, Mr. George, most of the questions are being directed to you at this moment.
So Chairman, if I may just give an overview.
Yes, please.
A little bit of context into some of the questions asked by the member. In terms of the move of Cyric and the development of the program of work of Cyric, at this time, the development program of works is not going to deviate greatly from what was originally undertaken under the local government, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, in that the intention, as the chairman would have stated, is to utilize information provided by the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government in terms of the development of the program of works for the company. So through the submissions from the corporation to the line ministry, to the which is Rural Development and Local Government, to the Ministry of Works and Transport, that is the manner in which the program of works is to be developed. In terms of with the OPR, and it is from that listing that contractors would be identified to be utilized. That is the process to be followed both by ministries and by state entities. In terms of plant and equipment, the ministry does have a certain amount of plant and equipment that it utilizes for its operational recurrent processes. It is not really envisaged that the company is going to be undertaking those recurrent type works to require the utilization of plant and equipment of that nature. However, of course, the ministry will stand ready to assist the company in its functioning, as mentioned by the chairman earlier, as it relates to some of the expertise under the Ministry of Works and Transport, and in particular via its pure unit. I also, in terms, I was a little unclear in terms of the coordination aspect raised by the member, but if the member would want to repeat it so that we can address the issue that he's highlighting.
I think, yeah, the member is just telling me the various entities involved. We have Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
Yes.
You have the Ministry of Works and now Cyric. And he was just in terms of the coordination and collaboration that has to go into the exercise to arrive at your work programs, allocation of resources and that sort of thing.
Right. In that instance, as I mentioned before, it really is, it's almost an amalgamation made by Rural Development and identified and provided to the Ministry of Works and Transport that is going to work into the program of works for the company. And in terms of the period of time it's been that it's taking, the Ministry of Works and Transport has identified that as the company is built out and as we develop the relationship with the other entities, the existing program of works that's there and that there's a priority for, those works will continue to be undertaken, or we will seek to undertake under our pure unit while we put everything in place.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Francis Yearwood. What I'd like to do is just a couple follow-up questions before we shift to another entity in the context of what has been asked by members before, in that in terms of a clear delineation of responsibilities, and then particularly in terms of the roads themselves, the classification of roads, whether primary, secondary, or whatever it may be, and then what it is the Ministry of Works and Transport is responsible for what it is the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government is responsible for, the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. Which would be the determining entity amongst all of those entities that is going to sort through all of this and say, well, look, these are the roads that this entity is responsible for, and it is going to fall under their work program. Because I'm also concerned about the continued role of PURE in all of this. Because, the committee has been informed that PURE undertook about 539 projects over a 5-year period. And PURE has been the primary arm of the Ministry of Works with regards to a lot of road rehabilitation works. And what is going to be the synergy between PURE and Cyric and the continued role of PURE? Is PURE role in this whole exercise going to be reduced? Is there going to be a transfer, a lending of resources to Cyric? Particularly in context of the substantial amounts of monies that are being put to Cyric, where you also mentioned about sharing resources or assisting Cyric with resources, rather than, because what I gather from the questions, some responses to the questions, you are already strapped for resources. You are strapped for equipment. You are, in terms of personnel, human resources, engineering staff, technical staff, you are already strapped in that regard to cope with the demands that are being placed on the Ministry of Works and through PURE and the other divisions you have. So when you say you're going to assist Cyric, the question comes up, are you in a position to, really? Or Cyric should really be developed on a basis of a standalone company that can really manage its own affairs in accordance with its mandate? I know there are several questions within what I've said there, but if you could please try to give us a response.
Chair, I want to, the assistance that the PS spoke about just now was more along the line of personnel who, while we are building out and recruiting the people that we require to be a standalone entity, we will be using or accepting the assistance that we get from PURE, or the assistance that PURE can give us at this time to get on or to commence or to start a few jobs in the field. But the building out, is continuing. And when that is done, hopefully we'll be able to say thank you very much to PURE, and we'll be able to move on as a standalone company. It is our plan to engage the services of as many contractors as possible, because we are working throughout the island, throughout the country. So we cannot just confine ourselves to the 1 or 2 people that, who have been engaged in roadworks, who we happen to know. Because as I said, there are many different components. There is the drainage, there is the actual paving, there is retaining structures. All those things will have to be attended to as we talk about the rehabilitation of roads. To that end, earlier this year, on January 28, we had a small contractors seminar, very well attended. So it was the Rural Development Company with Cyric, and we worked with the Trinidad and Tobago Contractors Association. And basically, we looked at 3 important areas: concrete, use of concrete, handling of concrete, road repairs and asphalt work, and quality standard for road materials. And what we were trying to get out there is the fact that quality will be important to us. We'll have to develop a culture of doing things and doing it correctly, because every now and again people will tell me, I hope what you do will be able to stand the test of time, because too often we have had works done and in a very short space of time, the work degrades. So we need to have a culture where those things are done, however small, done and done properly. So we had that seminar on January 28th, as I said, where we were trying to sensitize as many contractors as possible. Those contractors, we encourage them to register with the OPR, so that those contractors should be there in the depository. And as we go forward, we'll be not depending on Pure for that aspect of the work. We'll be going out there and tendering. We'll be outsourcing the actual execution of the works among competent contractors that are available in the various areas of the country.
Yeah, Mr. George, I understand what you're saying, but coming back to the whole thing, what you have outlined there, those things are being done for quite a long time, for many years now, by the Ministry of Works and Transport, and particularly under the Pure unit. So you're adding nothing new, really. Maybe there's dedicated funding for you to utilize to address the problems that we are facing. But I did ask a question, I am just trying to get clarity in terms of what Pure is going to do, what the Ministry of Rural Development and local government is going to do, what Cyric is going to do. And is there a clear understanding amongst you all in terms of, Member Ibrahim talked about the coordination to avoid duplication, of work being done, and all of these things. So yes, quality and pre-qualification of contractors and training and all those things have been around for quite a while. So telling this committee that is, I would certainly not like to think is that we're going to start afresh, but it's a continuation, and there are going to be marked improvements to fill the gaps that are there, to address the gaps that are there in the whole system. And I think that is what I'm seeking in terms of a response.
Okay, well, Chair, earlier you intimated that there are a lot of categories of roads under the Highway Act. We have the main road, the special road, secondary road, and all those other different types. When I look at what Pure has been doing, yes, they have done a lot of work. But the secondary roads, I am not too sure that if there's another player now, and another entity to look at the secondary roads, given the volume of work that is required there, that it will affect Pure's work program, there'll be enough work for Pure to continue doing what they have been doing. So it's not that we are taking away from Pure. We are adding, as I said, we are adding bandwidth, because there are all these different types of roads that some of them, they're like orphan, that they have not been attended to. So that is why we talk about our focus being on the secondary roads. And I want to also add that what is important sometimes is not so much a classification as it is the severity of the problem that exists. So for example, if a road is in need of serious repair, as that one that I spoke about leading to that school, at that time, it just had to be repaired, without stopping to think that, okay, this is a special road, whatever other road, and it should be done by Pure or somebody else, right? We were available, we had the bandwidth, we went and we had it done. So there will be some of that, as well as attending to those various categories of roads that the Act has defined. And I'm saying that Pure over the years, they have But as I said, it's always a mixture depending on the severity of the defects that are presented. But it's not solely, it's not compartmentalized so tightly that they only look at A and not B, C, or D.
Okay, thank you, Mr. George. Ms. Ayood, you wanted to say something?
Chair, really it was in response to your original question. The Ministry of Works and Transport is extremely clear as to its mandate in terms of the roadways under its remit under the Highways Act, the program of works undertaken by its agencies, meaning Highways Division, Bridges, Landslip, and Traffic Management, as well as PURE. Over the years, as you rightly would have stated, because we have been before this committee before, the ministry has not simply stayed within its specific mandate under the Highways Authority Act, and has expanded into other areas as required under its PURE unit, because the PURE unit in its creation was also identified for that. The creation of Cyric for assistance in terms of secondary roads via cooperation and Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, as Mr. George would have indicated, has added capacity in terms of ensuring that there is no duplication. That is where the relationship between the ministry and the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government is going to continue. So in terms of not of clarity, as the company builds out and as we continue to undertake work, that clarity will become even more apparent. But there is no at this time any overlapping. In terms of how we are seeking to assist the company in its build out and resources, it really is in the question in certain areas of economies of scale. So where we would have already established certain processes to undertake certain engineering requirements, that can be made available to Cyric because the platform is already there. And we are seeking to assist to get them up and running as quickly as possible, utilizing our resources in the most efficient way.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Francis Ayood. Member Padarat, you have your hand up.
Yes, Chairman. Chair, I want to go back to something that the chairman of the Secondary Roads Company raised to get some clarity from any member of the committee, or those appearing rather. And it has to do with a comment that was made about a particular school and the necessity for the intervention of any state agency, whether it's the Secondary Roads Company or the ministry themselves, to provide some sort of relief. And again, I'm drawing experiences because this is not unique to the constituency of Princestown. This is happening across the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago. In September of 2022, a school in my constituency, the Robert Village Hindu School, was unable to be opened on the first day of school. We tried contacting the Ministry of Works and Transport, the Ministry of Rural Development, because simply the parts of the road had collapsed adjacent to the school. And it was a tremendous hazard to both the commuters as well as the children and parents who go to that school, in terms of the children attending, their parents would come to pick them up, drop them off, etc. And I was very happy to hear that the chairman of the Secondary Roads Company spoke about the intervention of the state of a particular school. But it raises the concern and the point I think Member Ibrahim also raised in terms of the coordination, the structure. And the question that I have is that my concerns for the children of the Robert Village Hindu School, like many other constituencies, fell on deaf ears. There was no response coming from the Ministry of Works and Transport. There was no assistance coming from the Ministry of Works and Transport. And the only avenues that we have available as elected members of Parliament is to go to the Parliament and you ask a question. And when you go to the Parliament and you ask a question, the minister will then say it does not fall under the purview of the ministry. It falls under the regional corporation. And the question that I have to anybody who's appearing before us today, and maybe the PS and the Ministry of Works and Transport might be able to help to guide us in terms of policy. What then is the policy? Because it is no rocket science to know that these regional corporations, with the funding they receive, cannot handle mega projects. Just recently on Friday, inside of the Parliament, I raised a project that's happening on the Naparima-Mayara Road. And as the Prime Minister was walking into the House, he kept asking the minister, was answering the question, who's spending all of that money? Where is that money being spent? And it was on the Naparima-Mayara Road that services constituencies in the southeastern peninsula of Trinidad and Tobago. It's not just Princestown or Moruga, Tableland, or Naparima or Mayaro, but this is a road that contributes significantly to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And the reason that I am raising this is that many times the funding that is required cannot be done through Ministry of Rural Development. It cannot be done through the regional corporations. And these projects are left to languish for years. And that is a major road that I'm speaking of. It is one of two access points to Mayaro, which is essentially a big part of the oil and gas industry here in Trinidad and Tobago. And for years, it has been unattended to until it is on the verge of collapse. It's only when now we're starting to see some sort of work there happening. And the question that I have to the PS particularly is, what is the policy? What is the policy in determining whether or not a landslip is fixed from cutting off one community from the other that cost people their lives? Because in the instance of St. Julian, lives were lost when a fire appliance could not pass on the St. Julian Road because of these landslips. And while I understand the issue of the global financial situation that we are in, together with the issue of Trinidad and Tobago's domestic economy, I'm kindly asking, what is the policy? Because it cannot be that a minister or any representative, whether it's from the political directorate or it is a public servant, will stand up and say, well, it's not this ministry, it's that ministry. And then the football is being kicked from one entity to the other, and the problem is not being resolved. So Member Ibrahim spoke about the coordination, but we also want to hear what is the policy. What is the policy in terms of getting things assessed in a timely manner? It cannot be, again, that when we are told that geotechnical work has to be conducted before project can start, that geotechnical work takes 2 and 3 years. So is it that this secondary roads company has clear policy, benchmarks, deadlines, and separate and apart from those issues that I'm raising, I also want to throw into the court of the PS in the Ministry of Works and Transport the issue of funding. Because the issue of funding, when we spoke about 100 million was initially given to the secondary roads company, then we were told that a few months later it was $200 million. Almost every road in Trinidad and Tobago has collapsed. That is no joke. And $200 million really is a drop in the bucket. And therefore, if we already have a lot of the data, as the chairman from the secondary roads company alluded to earlier, that it has not been shelved, despite nothing has been done with it in the last 8 years, the question then remains whether or not $1 million is going to be sufficient. One may say, well, they will come for supplementing funding. But the PS, I'm kindly asking, in the next budget, because we have a budget coming around in just a few months, 3 to 4 months, what is going to become of this secondary roads company? Is it going to continue being a piecemeal company of just an average of $200 million? Because obviously the PS will have some involvement in terms of the actual budgeting. And therefore the budgeting of this company in the future, while we know that the PS can't give us a specific figure, the PS must be able to tell us, well, we are looking at this company doing 500 projects in the next year, and this is possibly what the allocation can look like. It's subject to revision. But right now, what we are doing here is a complete waste of time because it gives us no specifics. It changes nothing for the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago. And today or tomorrow, it's the same cycle of this one blaming that one because this one is saying it's under the purview of the Ministry of Works and Transport, while the other is saying it's under the purview of the regional corporation. And the citizenry has a general feeling at this time of being totally fed up, of not getting any sort of response that brings them any sense of relief in the long term or the short term. And I think it is incumbent on us as a committee today to be able to ventilate those issues. what is the specifics coming out of this secondary roads company in terms of that coordination, but also in terms of the funding and also in terms of landslips, because we are concentrating a lot on the roads, but there are constituencies like mine, like Naparima, like Maruga Tablan, where people have lost their entire livelihoods and their entire savings, all that that belongs to them. And it is really a sad state. And for many of us who sit on these committees, whether it's in the red or in the yellow or indifferent, the thing about it is that our lives may go on thereafter, the committee ends. But the thing about it is that public officials need to take responsibility for the mandate, and a mandate in terms of what the secondary roads company mandate was dealt with earlier. But these specifics we are not hearing about. All we are hearing is things have not been shelved, this can be done, that can, but there's no actual specifics on these projects and in terms of these companies. So those are some of the things that I would actually like to hear coming from the chairman of the secondary roads company, as well as the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Works and Transport.
So remember, we go first to the permanent secretary, Ms. Francis Yearwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I come back to, I guess, the objective of the Joint Select Committee today, which is an inquiry into the efficiency of road repairs, land slippages, and landslides. Yes? And the member would have identified a number of areas, underpinning all of which was really the angst being experienced by the general public in terms of the challenges he has identified for road repairs and landslips, and he need to get specifics in terms of how the policy sets, the metrics I think that we utilize, and what the funding may look like for the next financial year. And if I take it in that context, the policy in terms of how a landslip or a roadway is identified for implementation, it varies based on the entity and the type of work to be done. So for instance, we would have started earlier today to identify that from a ministry perspective, we undertake a road condition survey every 2 years. And that is supplemented during the year by regular reviews based on our district system, as well as based on some of the specialized units that we have, which is how our road program comes to light. In the interim, we would have natural occurring issues, let us say if it is heavy rainfall, etc., which will result in projects coming to the fore that has to be dealt with on an even more immediate nature. Inside of that area that I would have identified, we have also established certain specialized units. One such unit has been the Bridges, Landslip, and Traffic Management Unit, because we recognized that there was a growing need and problem in the area of landslips. The severity that was happening based on a number of factors, and the backlog that we had caused us to develop this unit that is taking care of the major landslips while we address the minor ones on our current program. Under the major landslips, we have a set criteria as to how projects are determined and how we address the hierarchy of projects for landslips. As it relates to funding on a yearly basis, as Member Padarat would have indicated, we will put forward our request to the Ministry of Finance, and based on a national adjudication, we are then identified as to what type of funding we would get. Member Padarat has asked for specific numbers as it relates to Cyric and Cyric's program of works. That is still being developed, so it is challenging to be able to give him specifics in terms of numbers at this time. And remember, I hear you in terms of your need to know what is going to be done, but it would be irresponsible of me to just give out figures or make statements before we have come to some final submission to be made to the Ministry of Finance.
Okay, Ms. Francis Hayward, I thank you for the effort you have made to respond to the questions posed by Member Padarat. And Member Ibrahim has a follow-up question he would like to ask. And then what I would like to do is we have spent a lot of time here with the Ministry of Works and Transport so far. We have other entities present, and I would like to maybe go to the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, because I see also Member Morris Julian has a hand up, and maybe she's going to direct her questions to that entity. But before I go to Member Ibrahim, Ms. Francis Hayward, is there in your budgeting, right, within the Ministry of Works and Transport, is there an allocation that you all make specifically for emergencies? Like, for instance, if there's a landslip, say, approaching a school and all of those things, and in order to maintain continuity in traffic and all those things, bring about some relief, temporary relief. Do you all actually have an allocation for emergencies?
So member, as you would have just stated, one of the main yardsticks that we work with is ensuring connectivity. We do not have a line item stated as emergency, an emergency line item. What we do is that in the event that an emergency happens, we would reallocate funds from within to seek to address the emergency, while we then seek to receive or request further allocation from the Ministry of Finance. We do that based on the simple yardstick that it is challenging to estimate the emergency.
It's just a suggestion, but maybe the ministry should really give consideration to having a line item, because
Chairman, if I may say, we have asked for one in the past, we have not received one. So we utilize funds from within.
Okay, so the committee take notes of that. We take note of that, and I would hand over to Member Ibrahim, and after him, we'll go to Member Morris Julian.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Hayward, you did allude to funding and lack thereof as a constraint. And it is duly noted, reference is made, I'm referring to the status update, and thank you for bringing us back into the crux of what the hearing is about, really and truly. It's the efficiency of road repair and land slippage. In your submission, it is noted that a number of projects were placed on hold in fiscal 2020, 2021, and 22-23. Would these projects be addressed in upcoming fiscal 2023? And I'm asking this question in combination with the 5 bridges and bridges reconstruction program phase 3A. Do we hope to have those things addressed? And as it applies to efficiency, when it is that we're talking about bridge repair and land slippage repair, and we have to hold back the completion of these works or approaching these works, and we have an impeding rainy season upon us and these things become worse, what is the process for going back to rehabilitation of these areas that can actually be even more affected? It seems to be like a landslip of events, for want of a better word, because you're having projects of landslips that you can't do because of fiscal constraints, and then they will definitely be damaged further. Can you shed some light on these projects and what would you be hoping to get done, which has been on hold for the last 2 years?
Thank you, Member. So once we have identified a project for execution, even if it is that we may not have proceeded in the manner intended, it is that we do continue with that project. You asked a specific question as it relates to phase 3 of our program. Yes, I will let the head of the BLT.
Hi, good afternoon, member. On our Bridges Reconstruction Program Phase 3A, we have scheduled 14 bridges for reconstruction. We have awarded 5 of those bridges a couple of months ago, and we have proceeded to get approval, that is confirmation of funds for additional 6. It is our intention to proceed to construction with all 14 bridges. As alluded earlier, depending on the state of the design, some projects are in a more advanced state than others while we treat with certain design challenges. But to date, we have approval to award 6 and 5, 11 of those 14 bridges. And before the end of this fiscal year, we are hopeful to have all 14 awarded.
Thank you. And PS, can you comment on the outstanding, the projects that were placed on hold for 2021 and 2022 and 2022, 2020? Would they be addressed in this fiscal year, hopefully?
Yes, member. I am looking for the specifics of the projects, but that is the intention. 6.
Okay, thank you very much to the Ministry of Works and Transport. We may come back to you all a bit later down, if time permits, or at another meeting regarding this inquiry. Member Morris Julian.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And yes, I do reserve the right to come back to Mr. Hayden Phillip to ask certain questions, especially when it's pertaining to my area. I would like to move on, though, Chairman, with your permission, to the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Governments. Now, through you, Chairman, Objective 1, to examine the current arrangements in place for the repair of road, land slippages, and landslides. We all know that the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government has a reputation of being first responders to disasters, especially of this nature, right? So the submission indicated, and I want to get it right. Firstly, the ministry will investigate complaints. Secondly, determine if it falls under the purview of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. And if so, thirdly, provide a solution by undertaking the required works to address the complaints. The works can either be procured by the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Governments. If funds are available, or refer to the municipal corporation or the rural development company, depending on the size of the project. So, Chairman, before I ask the other very pertinent questions, I really want to understand, how do they determine? What is the parameter? How do you decide if this landslide is mine, yours, theirs? I also would like to know the aspect of the funds. Municipal corporation or rural development, how does that go? Is it a horse trading exercise? Is it you give me this week. I really want to know, and I'm sure the listening and viewing public also is.
Mr. Mitchell?
Hi, okay. Hi, Chair, members. Member, with your question, we have to determine firstly if this road fall under the jurisdiction of municipal corporation, because as was alluded to in the previous discussion with the Ministry of Works and Transport, we have to avoid duplication of works. And I want to say that in this case, there is ongoing collaboration with the Ministry of Works and Transport in this case. The ministry receives from the regional corporations, particularly councillors, and of course, members of parliament, roads or landscape that need to be repaired and how urgent it's supposed to be. We have to do an assessment to know whether the municipal corporation can deal with the project internally. If they can, and if there's no resources, we can accede on their request to the Ministry of Finance, or we will undertake to do it from our head office allocation on their behalf. There are other projects that go to the RDC, as indicated in our submissions, for these, depending on the complexity and the size of the project. Now, if I have to go back to what the chairman of the secondary roads company had indicated, that is the plan going forward in terms of addressing all of the backlog of complaints and the delays in dealing with roads, where we will get requests from the municipal corporations. And right now, our rural development company is doing yeoman service by trying to facilitate the ministry and the municipal corporation, because there are some projects that are very complex, because the municipal corporations may not have the complicated equipment that we need to undertake certain road repairs. Also, what we try to do is that if a corporation needs assistance in fixing a road, as I indicated in my opening statement, we try to pool resources. We'll ask another corporation if you can loan them a particular piece of equipment that they can use, even if it's a vehicle or a backhoe or something that they can use to work. But the most important thing is that we have to avoid the jurisdictional challenge as well as the duplication of works, because one of the things that we are very careful about, and the head of our engineering unit can go into more detail, is that if there's a project that we are doing that is close to a current work being done by the Ministry of Works and Transport, we do collaborate to get synergies in that particular project. So that's why I emphasize that we do have collaboration ongoing. So I don't know if Mr. Babu want to go into detail.
Yes, definitely. We do collaborate. What we try to avoid is any sort of interference with respect to our works. We try to get the best out of resources from whichever entity, be it RDC, be it the Ministry of Works and Transport, so that we can find a reasonable solution with respect to the matters that we undertake to address. So yes, we do collaborate very closely if works are in close proximity, as the case may be. If there is any conflict with respect to access and so on, of course we would come to some agreement as to who would do their works in first, depending on priority as the case may be. So yes.
Member
Through you, Chairman, I just have a few more questions. I am also well aware that in a few spaces you would see a sign, be aware, road ahead, etc. A bad road, landslide. Does the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government engage in continuous monitoring to detect the same? Do you know the areas prone to landslips? Do you all look out for it? Do you all do, and if so, what do you do to prevent it? I'm asking if there anything that you do to prevent the said landslips, those landslides from happening.
Okay. We depend on the municipal corporations to be our eyes and ears on the ground, because you would allude that the ministry is a coordinating entity and we support the municipal corporations. They normally do their road inspection from time to time. Each corporation has a different schedule how they do it with those road officers, because there are road officers assigned to all of the regional municipal corporations, sorry. And they will do, and they would flag certain things, because in preparing for the annual estimates, you have to let us know what roads you would think you want to repair in the coming fiscal. What roads look as though a deterioration is going to happen and so forth. Do we need to do works from now and so forth? Of course, we can't predict that if there's, like when we had the heavy rainfall in November and some roads got damaged, we didn't predict that. But the municipal corporation, as far as possible, in preparing the estimates to go forward. And right now we have the estimates to review in the ministry before submitting to the Ministry of Planning and the Ministry of Finance. And we do look at those things. So we depend on the municipal corporation that if there is some deterioration, and of course, the Minister's Secretariat do get complaints from or some concerns written to him by the members of Parliament, and that is forwarded to Mr. Baruch's division, saying that this landslip is happening and so forth. So there's some level of trying to do preventive, but as alluded to in the Ministry of Works, funding is an important consideration in these things. But in preparation of our budgetary estimates, the municipal corporations do in fact let us know in advance where they think deterioration is going to happen. I don't know the technical term that they use, Mr. Baruch may know that, but I do know that that is done particularly those corporations in the city, with the city corporations, because I dealt with a couple recently in that regard as an example.
Well, through you, Chairman, as a former councillor, I can tell you, I would like information, the estimated time frame. Because nothing is more painful than making a request and seeing the request happen at the end of your term. And then everyone will turn around and say because it's election, when in fact, you did put in your request. So could you just, for the sake of others who may not be aware of the process, the estimated time frame for the undertaking of works by your ministry, by the municipal corporation or the rural development company?
Okay, I'll ask Mr. Baruch if we can go into a bit more. Right, so with respect to the municipal corporations, as you said, you've been a former councillor, you would be aware that from the level of the municipal corporation, projects are put forward by councillors, the technical team or staff would go and assess the works, do their estimates, etc. Of course, bring it to council, and once that is approved, then the program of works are established, put up in the draft estimate, etc., to go forward in the next fiscal year. So that is with respect to what takes place at the municipal corporation level. With respect to projects that, of course, the municipal corporation requests assistance from the line ministry, the head office engineering department would, of course, do the assessment, determine, of course, an estimated cost to undertake the works, and if it falls, within our limit, we would put it on our priority listing to undertake through head office. If it is, sizable and outside of our limit, of course, we refer the project to RDC, Rural Development Company. So it's a bit difficult to say, give you a time frame. It depends, of course, on one, how critical the project is, and of course, the available funds at the time. So if it is that the project is not undertaken and say it comes to head office and it is to be done by the head office, and it is not undertaken in that particular fiscal year, it would roll over into to go forward into the next draft estimate year to be done. So that is how we try to treat with it. And in addition to add, honorable member, to what Mr. Baruch said, the question of timeliness in terms of project execution is being taken seriously by the ministry. We are looking to reduce the time it takes for a decision to go to tender. And we have had some successes this year with that. I think the Honorable Minister would have mentioned it in his presentations in Parliament over time, and particularly in the last Standing Finance Committee. But we're trying to reduce the time it takes for the municipal corporations to say, okay, we have funding for this, let's go to tender, go through the tendering process and have contract execution. As you would know, as a former councillor, honorable member, it used to take months, sometimes 7 to 8 months. And coming down to August, September, you may find releases happening, and now we want to start the project. Our mandate from the honorable minister, it was to reduce that, and we have internally within the ministry, how should I put it, re-engineered some of our processes, and through our project planning unit, we will trying to see how best we can accelerate the implementation by shortening by half, so that by midterm, projects will be ongoing, and it will be ongoing and will be actioned. Because I took it from your initial question that you are aware that sometimes traditionally by July, August is only when in some corporation would have started to spend their allocation. But this year we have had some successes in that. It's not perfect, but it's still a work in progress, but we are trying to improve on that. And as we move towards a new governance framework for the municipal corporations, more decision making will be taking place at the municipal level than at head office level.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just have one more question, I promise, and I just want to congratulate the ministry on the good news. I'm happy to hear that the turnover time frame is much shorter. Of course, I heard my colleagues say it, but I was happy to hear it again. In your submission, the Arima Borough Corporation indicated that repairs that need urgent attention are undertaken promptly through the Works Department. Otherwise, areas identified to be repaired which does not cause imminent danger to life will require the approval of the Arima Borough Council. Could you let us know if the ministry and the other municipal corporations have similar arrangements to undertake works promptly, similar to the Arima Borough Corporation? Is this the norm? Is this policy? Or is it unique to the Arima Borough Corporation?
Thanks for that question, honorable member. And in a previous joint select, I would have indicated that the corporations are not monolithic. The Arima Borough Corporation is one of some corporations that do take that time. There is no, at this time, a coherent policy in terms of how we address it like that. I know a few other corporations that who have adopted the same borough corporation. What we do at the ministry, we have over time meetings of the chief executive officers of the various corporations, and they would articulate their experiences. And I can tell you, in one such meeting, one corporation offered to assist another corporation in terms of speeding up their own project management capabilities, and that has been done. So what Arima has done is not confined to Arima. All the other 13 corporations would be aware of it through our CEO's meetings, as well as Mr. Baruch meets with the engineers of the various corporations. So we are trying to look where there's best practice in the corporation to replicate that to the other corporations. And as I alluded to a while ago, we hope that the new governance framework will put forward that kind of rigidity in terms of policy frameworks, in terms of how we deal with emergency works and so forth.
Thank you very much, because I was a little concerned, and I'm happy to hear that best practice is what you're aiming for, correct? So all 40 corporations will learn from each other. Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. If I need to, I will jump back in.
Okay, thank you very much, Member Morris Julian. Mr. Mitchell, I'd just like to get a response from you regarding, in terms of particularly well, the ministry directly and also the respective corporations in terms of your capacity assessment in terms of your resources. Now, you mentioned about road officers and they being engaged in assessments and then development of estimates and all of those things. Now, my question is in terms of the corporations in particular, where the road officer, it's the primary officer in charge of these aspects. I am asking about the competence of the road officers and the training of the road officers, particularly when you look at the challenges that we are being faced with particular regards to the landslips and land slippages, because it's an area of expertise in order even for preventative measures to be taken. And you did in your response to Member Morris Julian mention that the road officers do those as well. So I'm trying to match it up in terms of competence and expertise, the ability to assess situations, to assess road conditions, particularly without laboratory testing, without equipment and all of these things. How does the corporation go about it? Or is there a gap there, a tremendous gap there that the corporations need to address? Like for instance, in the corporations, I'm not sure, other than the cities, if there's engineering staff, civil engineering staff, road engineers, etc., on the staff of the corporations to engage in designs, engineer designs, and also to ensure that proper specifications are developed for road rehabilitation and road repairs, etc., that would fall under the purview of engineering staff. So could you give us an indication?
Okay, sure, no problem. And Mr. Baruch will join in to drill it down. Let me start with what you asked about the capacity. As I had indicated when I appeared before this committee on a different subject inquiry, we have a challenge with the service commissions. And I say that because what you just alluded to about engineers, we do have the positions of civil engineer and engineers, both at head office and the municipal corporations. They are to be filled by the service commission. The ministry through our HR division would have been communicating with the service commissions. So the position and the qualifications is there in terms of dealing with the engineering aspects of it. And with respect to training of the road officers, we have an HR consultant right now that's assisting us in moving towards the new governance framework. And she is going to identify the skills gaps and what training we will have to do so that moving to the new governance framework will be a medium to long-term process. But training is very important. What we have done with the Ministry of Planning and Development, we have trained some of the road officers, particularly in the basic project management and assessing, doing project screening briefs and so forth, in terms of preparing, looking at a road that is in danger of collapsing, and how do you prepare the proposal to come forward to the Ministry of Planning and Ministry of Finance for funding. We did training for the corporations in North, and then the following week we did training for the corporations in South. So we have done what we can do internally right now, thanks to the efforts of the Ministry of Planning and Development in terms of training the road officers, as well as some of the engineering and survey officers there. But the capacity is an issue. And as we move towards the governance framework, the corporations will now be empowered to hire those technical staff on contract. They can't do that right now in some cases. They do have some of the engineers, I think some of the engineers on contract, some of the engineers on contract, but then that's a decision that has to come to head office and so forth. So the corporations can make those decisions very quickly once we move to the new governance framework. But we have hired some engineers on contracts in the corporations. And as I alluded to, the positions are there on the establishment. 4 of the municipalities are under the Statutory Authority Service Commission. That's the 2 cities and the 2 boroughs. and the rest, that is the Borough of Shoguanas and the rest of the regional corporations, are under the Public Service Commission. So we have to deal with two service commissions, and we make our case and make our plea to fill the engineering positions of that, because I think some of the frustration that a couple of your members expressed in terms of the delay in dealing with these things is the vacancies and the absence of these qualified personnel in the corporations. So we have to either use the short-term method or the contract employment method, pending the various service commissions appointing these people. I don't know if Mr. Baru, who deals with the engineers, will want to.
Right. Yes. Thank you. Most of the engineers at the municipal corporations, 10 out of 14, they are contracted. The majority of them have the experience and expertise to undertake designs of a different nature, be it for roads or landslip repairs in terms of retaining structures, etc. So by and large, they have the expertise. Of course, there will be deficiencies in some of the municipal corporations where that is lacking in terms of experience. So clearly, there is a need for some training in that regard. In cases where there is that lack of experience or expertise, what we do is we encourage to do geotechnical investigation with respect to outsourcing in order to get the parameters in order to have proper designs done. So that is where those deficiencies lie. We fulfill design capacity in that way. Yeah. So we try. It's as work in progress with respect to the less experienced engineers, but we have been making some headway. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now I note you're using terms like trying and doing your best. But really and truly, what the public needs outside here is for you to transition from that trying and doing your best phase to actually doing. And this is where the committee is looking to try to identify, what are the challenges that are facing us in that regard to get to that stage. Now, when we look at the responses that you have given to the committee, particularly the responses that came from the corporations regarding your quality assurance and quality control of the works that are undertaken, particularly as we're looking at road repairs. Now, the responses are almost like ideal responses, I should say, in terms of standards are being followed, AASHTO is being followed, ASTM is being followed, British standards are being followed. But it does not connect with the perception outside there. And probably it's more of a perception in the eyes of the public. Generally, in the eyes of the public, and I'm saying it frankly, the works that are done by the corporations are shoddy, and they don't last long, and they do not follow any specifications, the way that the works are actually conducted. So this is why I asked the question about capacity and road inspections and the extent of inspections that are done by the respective corporations to ensure that we get value for money. Because, for instance, for pothole repairs, your response from the corporation's response is you square off the holes, you remove the material, you compact, you put down the base course in 1-inch layers. I saw that in some of the responses. But the public would tell you, I don't have to tell you, that is not taking place outside there. It is not taking place, despite the responses that we have received as a committee. The public sees a truck pull up, tip, and just throw the material into the hole. These are things that are commonly observed by the public. And the view outside there is that the standard of road repairs, your road restoration that are being done is substandard, and we're not getting value for money. Any comments on that?
I'll just give a brief comment, and since you go to quality assurance, I'll go to the technical expert. Mr. Chairman, I take your point. I'm also a user of the road network myself, and there is always room for improvement, and we will strive our best to do that. At the Ministry of Road Development and Local Government, as alluded to by the chairman of Cyric, we are hoping to establish or to bring into being our interface where the members of the public can let us know about deficient roads, roads that need repair, and even roads that were completed and deteriorating fast, so that we can sort of make inquiries and intervene to find out about the particular contractor and so forth. So that's what I want to give to an overview, but since it's a very technical question, I don't know if Mr. Baru want to.
Yes, Chair, I do share your sentiments. We drive along our nation's roads, we see repairs being undertaken. Clearly, it's a matter of supervision and senior managers as well undertaking, not just supervising the staff, but with respect to having those technical discussions, those meetings to, and getting reports to, determine that what needs to be done with supervision is being done. But as you said, clearly, it's been reported by the public that this is not being done. This is not the case. And it's clearly a supervision issue. It's something that the ministry will have to address at our engineering forum meetings with our engineers. And for that continued training, it might very well be as well deficiency in those technical skills at the lower levels of the technical staff in the municipal corporations. So it's something that we want to strive to improve on. Definitely need to put training at the top with respect to getting that level of expertise to the lower technical staff at the municipal corporations. Is something we at the head office, we will have discussions on to try to improve that and to try to improve the perception by the public at large.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Mr. Baruch, for that response. But you see, what I just something for you to think about is that supervision, yes, the competence of your supervisory personnel to do a proper job. But that is from your perspective as an engager of services, as a client then, so to speak. And essentially, you all are playing the role of a quality assurance. But when we come to quality control, which I would distinguish from quality assurance, you are taking measures to assure or to say, well, we are increasing the possibilities by our supervision of getting a good product. But the quality control itself, to ensure that a product is made properly, it comes back to the contractors who are providing the service. And what we observe is that contractors are just left up to their own means and devices. They bring what they want to do. They use methods that are not in the specifications. But the contractors themselves, and maybe this is something that you all can look at, in building in the specifications for the contractors, that they are responsible for quality control. They are the ones responsible for quality control to ensure that what they are doing falls within the quality parameters of what they have been contracted to do. And maybe we can even go further to have somebody specifically assigned from the contractor as part of the contract arrangements, a quality control officer that is paid by the contractor, falls under the responsibility of the contractor, who would be able to ensure that the work's being done by the contractor, meets the quality requirements. So it's something that maybe could you all could look at. I'll hand over to Member Ibrahim.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon again. I would like to engage discussion with the University of the West Indies. From my understanding, only Dr. Lee Leon was present. I don't know if more have joined since. In your submission from the UWI, it had indicated that a request for information was made for any existing documentation on procedures, processes, and methods used by the various local government agencies, and you stated that it was not provided. My questioning will be going down this line. When was this request made, and did the local agencies indicate what their main challenges were and why they were not able to provide such information? And if yes, that you did receive the feedback, can you indicate what was the main challenges that were identified by these agencies?
Mr. Lee Leon?
Good afternoon.
Sorry, Dr. Lee Leon.
Yes, I will have my team member, Mr. Chidi, to respond to that, because he was the one who made the request asking for the documentation.
Good afternoon, Chairman, honorable members, distinguished colleagues. When we were asked to be part of this team, of course, the first initial request, and this would have been made initially in, I believe, March, through the Office of the Principal. And the response we got is that no documentation was put forward. And in responding to the questions, we try to stay away from observations and personal observation, as expressed by the chairman, difference between the quality assurance, quality control, and competencies. And you will notice that our response will be primarily on training and competence development. And that is where we reside at the moment. I must say, though, that the questions being asked from all members are very informative, and is something that we at the university would definitely like to partner with the various ministries, primarily because we have the equipment for testing here, and we are the ones that are churning out our graduates. When I hear that from the chairman and others, we will just talk about potholes. The engineer will know a little bit different on how to distinguish the potholes, you know, from rotten corrugation. Sometimes you will see alligator back cracks on the road, you know. So an engineer will know to distinguish that. And also from the landslide perspective, what are the causes of a landslide? So the technical development will allow the differentiation between the triggers and causes and root causes of landslide, rather than painting a all-in-one, a broad brush approach, one size fits all, as also with potholes and pothole development. Mention was also made about the road officers. Again, we at the university will love to partner to build the competency. We have training programs. We have courses developed, especially when it comes to maintenance and pavement repair. There are different levels of training program. Construction management is the diploma level, and then after there's the master's level. That is not only tailored for engineers alone, but again, anyone with a bachelor's degree and some level of experience. So from that aspect, we will again hope that some of the policies, process, procedures that are being discussed for the past 2 hours, if these things can be made available, we can offer our expertise, and then after help in terms of the risk assessment, in terms of the scheduling, in terms of the work programming methodologies. We can offer those services.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. You know, being from a background of science myself, I see the need and I understand what you're saying with respect to testing and not one broad brush approach to all. And there is a need, there seems to be a need for some level of research and testing to occur. And being probably aware of the capabilities of the university, it is very well received that you should suggest and make such comments. My other question, because you basically took to town what I would have liked to have gone on to. I'm just asking, just to go a little deeper into what you stated. The areas that you spoke about, at the basic level, we know that we use two primary materials, and it always comes up, asphalt and bitumen. Has the university ever done independent testing to see if these materials are actually not just adequate, but if they suit our climate and our usage? And are there not studies out there already suggesting that we can alter these raw materials utilizing additives to make them more wear resistant, more thermal resistant, more create a better attrition and traction for our motor vehicles, so that we can extend the life out of it and at the same time not utilize just that material only because it is one of our blessings that we receive at Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, Dr. Chiri.
In terms of the materials, I'll default to Dr. Leon.
Yes, thank you. Firstly, this is broken up into two main aspects, more material, and then you have the design aspect. In terms of the material, we have done significantly a number of research with academics as well as our graduates. And we have looked at our local aggregates and as well as our binders provided by TLA, Trinidad and Tobago. We have seen that our materials, although sometimes being classified as marginal, do work. With modifications of the mixes and as well as the application of the construction process being done correctly, they can work, they can last once the quality aspect is maintained. Yes, it's always good to see whether we can use other materials to improve the road infrastructure, but sometimes this comes with research. Adopting or importing or taking other materials from other countries, which we have seen others have modified the binders and so on. But for the particular climate, they have done significant amount of research work to see whether it works for them or not. So we have to get a culture of research and look at these different options available, or we want to adopt and do research on it, whether it's short-term, whether it's a year, or long-term research, and collect data and analyze the data and see whether this application is suitable for our climate. Especially, we have that issue of climate change where we have a rising temperature, and our asphalt pavements, our road pavements are becoming sometimes 50 degrees at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. So also locally, they have a shift to going to a stiffer binder to address the issue of the rising temperature. And this, from our research, seems to be working, has proven to give, has given some good results. But it's always the bind of whether or not the state agencies will like to move, or whether the contractors, whoever else are involved in the road construction, whether they would like to move in applying these modified binders or this new application, or even improving the quality checks and the quality control. So research has to be done. We're using our material available as well as modified materials, and also comes to design. Do we understand our materials? How do they behave? Some people say, for example, some people say put 6 inches of asphalt, put 4 inches of asphalt, put 2 inches of asphalt. Is that really a solution? How did you come up with the answer unless you design it and understand the materials you have available? So so research and design education, as we come back to, as Mr. Chetty was saying, we come back to educating, training our engineers, even technicians, as to the proper use of the material, as well as understanding the behavior or the characteristics of the material, will help improve the road infrastructure locally.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. Mr. Mitchell, I trust you were listening to the when persons from the UWI were speaking, Dr. Chetty in particular, because notwithstanding the training that was offered to your personnel by the Ministry of Planning and Development, I think it would have geared a lot towards maybe project management and those aspects of what is required. But in terms of the technical training, and Dr. Chetty did outline quite a lot in the short time that he spoke, in terms of really building the competence of our road officers and even our engineers who have graduated. Continued training is exceedingly important. So I think there's a lot of scope that is coming out here in terms of the proposed local government reform. When that act is fully proclaimed, the whole aspect of enhancing competence, technical competence and training. I am of the view that the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government should seriously consider, collaboration with the University of the West Indies in this regard.
Yeah.
You should really seriously consider it, engage in discussions with them, look at the necessary budgeting that has to be done, the programs, allowing your staff the time off to attend these programs, even getting additional persons to attend the training, because it really is going to address, this gap that exists. So thank you, gentlemen from the University of the West Indies. It's 4:22, and our scheduled time to finish is 4:30. We haven't engaged the Tobago House of Assembly as yet. I'll do so for a very brief moment on the basis that, based on the discussions that we have had thus far, is that the committee would have to call back the respective entities so that we can continue with our discussions and dialogue, because there are quite a lot of questions and issues that we haven't had the time to raise as yet. And we trust that you would be willing, you would make yourself available. Our secretariat would inform you accordingly. But before we go to the closing remarks, along the same lines, in terms of staff capacity, availability, technical competence, along the same lines we were discussing with the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, I'd just like to have a response from the Tobago House of Assembly, the DIQUD department. If you can just, that particular aspect, if you can just appraise the committee of where you are with regards to that aspect. So we'd ask Mr. Jackson, can respond.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because of his breadth of experience, I will pass the question on to Dr. Boris, please. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. Good afternoon, Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Boris. We're hearing you.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to make sure that you were, and at least I commend you for your comment with respect to the training process that required to be in the various ministries to enable an upliftment of the technology that we are implementing on roads, etc. At least I could articulate that probably the COVID has caused a lot of challenges, and the workforce has a little bit of a certain amount of depression. And I think to really move the total organization of the road development for Trinidad and Tobago, we need some retraining exercises to take place throughout all the ministries and even the Tobago House of Assembly, because the knowledge that need to be transferred to some of the supervisors requires some level of upliftment, and it will even drive a certain level of motivation, having got new knowledge and understanding to drive the process in a more effective way. The training that is so required will assist significantly with respect to the road patching. At least you mentioned about that level of competence with respect to patching. We were engaging the university at a certain level to bring some level of training here to us in Tobago. I have not been successful in getting everything done as respect to that, but I'm working on it. So now that we have an engagement with the various ministries here and also the University of the West Indies, I would follow up that process most effectively hereafter. So against that background, we know that training is important, and it also motivates workers to go forward in a more technical and from an engineering perspective, retraining is so important because we need to keep the standard of our performance going at that level that it can able to bring a level of satisfaction to the public. So thank you against that background, and we would continue with our exercise, so get to engage the university going forward. Thanks.
Yeah, Mr. Jackson, thank you, Dr. Boris. And Mr. Jackson, let me extend apologies to you all for because we are out of time. But what I would like to assure the THA, the DIQUD unit, that when next you reappear before this committee, we would be asking you questions first. Okay. So thank you very much, gentlemen. So in the remaining time we have, I would just like to invite brief closing remarks from the entities that are here present. And as we have the THA here with us, Dr. Jackson, any brief closing remarks you would like to offer?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I must say that so far these sessions under you and this committee have been very illuminating. There are a lot of very serious issues and areas that are focused on. And I take cognizance of the collaboration. We need to do a lot more collaboration because the science is moving on. We have to be checking in terms of how these methods are going on. Because I particularly like the question that Mr. Member Ibrahim was asking in terms of that, because we are doing a set of patching and all those things with roads, etc. And after you look around after a while, you see there's some sort of issue in terms of some of those things. So we really need to be paying a lot more attention in terms of that, because resources are scarce. So we can't be doing some of these things over and over. In your previous session with climate change, we would have spoken about using the more natural solutions in terms of these landslips. I feel that those are some things that we also need to look at. I will end by emphasizing the training. We really need to, because to a certain extent with COVID, we could say that some of our workers may have de-skilled, and you don't want that happening going forward. And I would welcome more laboratory research and work, and also proper monitoring and evaluation, because sometimes when we do these works, the crew that does this work, you don't really have somebody going back after a period of time, 3 months, 6 months, evaluating what it is and seeing what are the lessons learned in terms of what has happened. And that's why we over and over could end up doing the same projects every 6 months, we're doing the same project over and over. And Mr. Chairman, I end by saying thank you very much for the forum, and we look forward to the continuation of the good work of this committee.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Ms. Francis Yearwood, closing remarks.
Thank you, Chairman and members, for inviting us today. I want to say that we look forward to the next invitation. The area under review, which is the inquiry into the efficiency of road repairs, land slippages, and landslides, continues to be an area that the ministry itself internally has revisited and keeps revisiting in order to do our best to get it right. The discussion, as always, has proven to be quite fruitful, and there are areas raised that we know that we can investigate further. So we thank you for the invitation, and we hope to continue with fruitful discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Yearwood. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members, I want to continue the sentiments and thank the committee for having us appear before them this afternoon. We take your suggestion on board, and we are moving ahead in terms of how we deal with the new paradigm of local government and to ensure that the municipal corporation can deliver efficient and effective service to the various communities. I think it was very instructive. We take your point on the training aspect. You sort of mirrored what we have been discussing internally here at the ministry. And of course, we will continue to accelerate that. And we will make the necessary representation to the Ministry of Finance in terms of beefing up our training portfolio or training program vote. Because as I said earlier, as the municipal corporation take on more responsibilities and decision-making regarding to road repair and landslip repair go to the corporations, it is the whole question of not only the resources, but also the capacity to do those things. So again, Mr. Chairman, and I want to echo the sentiment expressed by the administrator of the THA, that this committee has been very insightful from the climate change one to now, and I think a lot of the discussions is food for thought for us here at the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell. You really have our best wishes from this committee. That local government reform is indeed a tremendous exercise, and I think collaboration is going to be key in bringing about the reform that is intended from the local government, the Municipal Corporations Reform Act. So we do identify with that voluminous and task that you have ahead of you. Dr. Chedi, would you like to offer some closing remarks?
Thank you, Chairman, honorable members, distinguished colleagues. Yes, the university is in its 75th year. The Department of Civil Engineering hasn't moved, and all the ministries are more welcome to join. And I do know part of my lecturing, I teach a couple of the engineers, non-engineers too, from the various ministries. And we want to develop and foster a little more a collaboration, especially when we are trying to solve recurring problems. And just a point to note, the master's program in construction management is possibly the cheapest program. And when asking the students about participation, I believe one of the main things is provision to be made from the various ministries to allow their employees to be time off, right, to participate in formal training programs, which most of these stuff that is being spoke about here is discussed, critiqued, debated, and even taught at a very formal level. So when they complete the program, some of these situations that seem to be reoccurring, we call it wicked problems, can be minimized over a medium-term period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Chedi. Before we close, I'd like to thank everyone, all the officials from the entities who are present here. The committee would also like to thank you for your written responses that was submitted to the committee. We know when these things come, it's a lot of work, and you have to go back to your staff for this additional work, and it does take an effort, and I think we really appreciate the efforts that you have put into responding to the questions in writing that was posed by the committee. So thank you very much. To our viewing and listening audience, we extend our thanks and trust that you would be joining us for future transmissions. I would like to thank all committee members who were with us for today's session. Unfortunately, I know that committee members would still have a lot of questions. We didn't get time to come back to some of the members, but I trust in the future sessions we are going to have, you will be able to ask the questions that you have in mind. And also, I'd like to thank the Secretariat, our most hardworking and efficient Secretariat, headed by Mr. Johnson Greenwich, and also to thank the broadcasting unit of the Parliament for making this production, taking it live on YouTube and our other channels. So thanks everyone once again, and I'd like to declare the meeting adjourned.
Thanks, Chair. Have a good holiday tomorrow.
Oh, okay, it's a holiday. All right, thanks.
Bye, everyone.